Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we have one of my favorites. We have a repeat guest on. I love it when our guests have so much great information that we didn't get it all out the first time. And so we have to have them on again. And this guest, oh my gosh, I looked and Todd has not been on the program since January of 2019. There have been some little changes since then, right? We're going to have a good time talking about that. So please join me in welcoming back to the program, Todd Palmer. Welcome, Todd.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back. It's been too long.
It has been. It has been. We have to make sure that doesn't happen again. So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into this. So Todd Palmer is a renowned thought leader, CEO, executive coach, and author who is committed to improving lives. As a successful entrepreneur and business owner, he works with both individuals and companies to support corporate growth, foster business startups, and guide leaders in the areas of talent management, workforce planning, and organizational development. As the CEO of a six-time Inc. 5,000 company, and that might have actually changed since I did this bio. We'll have to find this out. Todd knows the struggles that businesses face around the areas of people, cash, strategy, and execution. Through his firm, Extraordinary Advisors, Todd is able to guide leaders into programs of sustained profitability. So again, Todd, welcome.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. Your energy is infectious.
And, as I said before the program, I haven't even had all my coffee yet. Can you imagine? I really do just have one cup a day. Otherwise, yeah. So tell us, it has been several years since we have chatted. Bring us up to speed as to what's been going on with you in those couple of years. And we'll really discuss COVID in depth, but let us know what's been going on.
I'm happy to talk about that. So it impacted me like it did most entrepreneurs, so I can appreciate that. Since the last time we spoke, I've officially retired from my recruiting company, Diversified Industrial Staffing. Fully devoted my time to my coaching practice, which I'm super excited about. COVID hit. I lost all of my stages. I had 6 stages.
Oh yeah, because you're a professional speaker.
Right. So it's good. That's how we get the message out. We get in front of our audience to potentially find coaching clients and to be of service to others. And from that break point of losing all of my stages, I worked with, so I use a coach. I coach and I use a coach. So I think if I'm going to continue to help others, I need to enhance and sharpen my skills. And in talking with that coach, he's like, I think you need to decide that COVID has happened for you, not to you.
Right.
So we did a lot of mindset work around that. Since that point, March, April, May of last year, I spoke for free to 42 CEOs in 67 days.
Wow.
I was on virtual stages around the globe, as far away as Asia, Malaysia, China, India, from Detroit, where I live. And my practice has grown 400%.
Wow.
Yeah, never would have guessed that. And because I had more free time and I was on less airports, less planes, finished my book, From Suck to Success, which went #1 in February of 2021.
Nice.
And so it's been a crazy ride. And as we were kind of talking about, I'm now back traveling. I just spoke this past weekend in Florida, of all places. So it was nice to get away and go down there. And next year, it looks like I've already got some opportunities to go out to Dubai, of all places. So it's been really nice to watch the world come back. It's been super exciting for me to work with entrepreneurs and leaders to help them get unstuck, to help them do inside out leadership, to take them, their businesses and their families to create the lives by design they really seek. And so, I'm happy to be here today to talk about all that and anything else that piques your interest.
Great. I love it. Well, I think COVID, it's as you said, either it happens to you or, it helps you. And, and obviously there were lots of tragedies and we don't ever want to underlie any of that. But I think so many people did see it as for, a way to make changes, especially CEOs, and corporate leaders, because they were forced to pause. And, and I think that was very interesting. I mean, like, my husband went to work on a Friday and was told, you're not coming back in on Monday. Luckily he brought his laptop home with him. Otherwise there would have been, some jiggling around on that. And he's worked in his office less than 10 days since then.
Wow.
And that's been primarily because things like our Wi-Fi have been down. It was hard to work from home when you can't work, but and he works for a very, very large corporation, but it made everybody pause and rethink their priorities. I think that was probably one of the things that I've heard a lot of people talk about. So you work directly with CEOs. What have been some of the things that you have heard from them?
Oh, very similar stuff. I mean, me as a CEO, one thing I had to recognize and realize when I lost all of my opportunities is, why am I really coaching? Like, right. Why do I do this? And I reflected back on the work I did with Simon Sinek, now going on 13 years ago, where I worked on my why for 2 years to come up with the 2 words, which are improve lives. And it dawned on me, I can improve lives from anywhere.
Right.
I can improve lives from being on your show, hopefully. I can improve lives from stage, certainly. I can improve lives from being virtual. I can improve lives in the grocery store line. I can talk. It's all about how I show up and how I choose to participate. And that requires a lot of communication. One of the things I really noticed last year with leaders is they had a really hard time communicating, and they struggled with that. Right. Because they, as leaders, they felt the pressure to know all things on all issues at all times to all people.
Right. And it's not that they're micromanaging, it was just, they were used to being with everybody.
Yes. And then they had to pivot in. How do I communicate differently? And I was working with a client, heart-centered leader, wonderful female CEO, and she was really struggling. She was struggling because we got her on a very, especially when COVID hit, and she had a manufacturing plant, sent everybody home. She was applying for all of her, PPP, EIDL loans, anything she could. And people were wanting to know how she was doing, where the business was going, what could they expect? Because what I found psychologically is, in the absence of communication, anyone, whether it's your staff, whether it's your C-suite leaders, whether it's your family, will, in the absence of communication, create their own narrative.
Right. They make it up.
and it typically is not in your favor, and it's typically not everything's going to be fine. So she was sending out a lot of emails because she thought that was the way she should do it. Because yes, I'll communicate. Well, she wasn't getting any real engagement. So we pivoted into creating a video series where she would record a video every day, and she would shoot it out to people via their cell phones. She had everybody's number. It's a small company, about 22 people. She was getting all this reactivity, and they created a little group, and everybody's sharing ideas, and people went over helping each other. And just because her intention was to communicate, it's an intention, not expectation. She's going to communicate. The delivery mechanism of email wasn't landing with her people. She pivoted into going into video, got engagement, got people connected, and she was able to maintain her entire team. Everybody knew what was going on. And for her, the hardest thing to say was, I don't have the answers. I don't know when this is going to happen, or when that's going to happen, or when we'll be back to work. Got her very much plugged into what I call her ATV, her authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability. And she was able to show up as a brand new leader for those people. And now that they're back into the facility, she feels that her team is even more connected. They know each other better, even though they got dispersed.
Right. And several things in there. I mean, we definitely know that nature abhors a vacuum, and that's the whole communication thing, and people, they think, well, if we don't have anything to communicate, why, we're not going to communicate, or, those things. And I remember, one of the things that, like through media training and crisis management and things like that, one of the best things that we always told people was to be able to say, I don't know, but I'll get you the answers, because that for one thing, it makes you human, and people are okay with their boss, with their CEO, with whoever saying, we don't know, because that does make them human. If you try to make it up, that never goes well. And if you ignore it, it's as you said, people all of a sudden assume they're not responding because it's bad.
Right.
And there was so much uncertainty. I I love the fact that they had said 2 weeks. It'll just take 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, have we hit that 2-week mark yet? And, and I'm, I actually think we've got probably another year before things have settled down to the point where we know what's going on, because we're going to have some more bumps and things along the road in a variety of ways. But, I think one of the worst things that I keep hearing people say, and I laugh and cringe at the same time, is we can't wait for it to get back to normal.
Right.
That's not going to happen. So what do you tell people when they say that?
Well, great question. The leaders who lament of wanting to go back to the old normal, of how things used to be. I use the comparison of music. When I was a young man back 100 million years ago, I used to listen to music in my car, either with a cassette or an 8-track, or
we dialed that little thing.
Yeah. Now I carry. I just looked at my Apple Music the other day. I have 1,400 songs and they're on my phone.
Right.
I still listen to music. I listen to it differently. So it's getting them to wrap their brains around the old normal is not coming back. What's the new normal going to look like? And what impact can you have on that? How can you take certain things? Because certain jobs, if you really look at, so my son's a CPA, best example I can give you. His job is measured on work performance created. What is his output? Not how many hours he took to do it, but what did he create?
Okay.
And he's been working from home, and his employer wants him to come back into the office. He's 30 years old. He's like, I'm actually getting more done by working from home.
Right.
What are you going to measure me on? How do we measure it so it creates the greatest customer value, the best experience for our clients, versus this perception of control that a lot of leaders want to have, a lot of CEOs want to have is, well, if I see you, I know you're working. Because there's old studies that show, and these old studies like are 3 years ago, we talk about if you pay somebody for 8 hours a day, you be glad if you get 5 hours of work out of them.
Right. Because they're chatting, they're checking Facebook,
internet surfing, interrupting other people, being the energy vampire in the office, going and just, deleting all those different things. So I think the new norm for people becomes, how do you measure the work you do? Going back to the why you do what you do. At a client I was working with in California, he was in the restaurant industry. They were shut down, clearly. And he was lamenting, and he was stressed, and he was frustrated. He had rent, he had staff, he had obligations. And we're talking about, take me back. Why did you get into the restaurant industry? And he's like, well, I'm a chef, and he was giving all the practical reasons, which are great. And I said, well, your restaurant was doing well at one point. It was a high-end restaurant, about, anywhere, depending upon, wine and alcohol, anywhere from a $250 to $400 average ticket per table. Not bad. I said, but why did you really get into it? Just put all this logic aside and let's go to your heart. He's like, let me tell you why I got into this place. I remember when I was courting my wife, we could never find a good restaurant to go eat in it. And I wanted to create a great place for people to have a date. I said, hey, let's pay attention to that. We pivoted him out of it. He was able to get out of his lease, condense his space. He got a little 400 square foot pizza shop. And he started making gourmet pizzas. The average cost of the pie was between $45 and $65. That's expensive pie. It's San Francisco, so let's be very clear where it's at. But he stuck into, and he created all of his marketing and his messaging around a great at-home date experience. He did $3 million of pizza sales in 18 months.
Yep.
Because he doubled down. So his new norm shifted. His space was still the same, creating a date experience through a restaurant experience, through food. The model is completely different. And actually his margins are higher. He has less overhead, and he loves it because he's like, I don't have to deal with making sure I've got 30 people in I got 5 people. We're cranking it out. People come, I don't have any, I got Uber, I got, Uber Eats or DoorDash. I have no delivery people. He goes, my overhead, he goes, my margins are happy. I'm thrilled. And I couldn't be happy for him because he saw this as an opportunity to pivot out of things, because he wasn't real super happy in the business he was in. He got, for a lot of different reasons, but he was able to pivot. So he was able to get where he wanted to go by doubling down on some of these things. So he doubled down on why he was doing it. He changed his communication model. He pivoted out of it. He didn't beat himself up over things he couldn't control, like a pandemic. And now he's doing great.
Right. And I can, only imagine that a big part of what was going on with him was the stress of managing all of that, all of those employees, all of that. I mean, because that completely took him out of his passion. He wasn't doing what he wanted to anymore. He was being the manager, the owner, and that was all that he was doing.
Yeah, most of us as entrepreneurs, I kid some of my clients. Said, take me back to when you started. And a lot of them, once you really get them to be honest, they really were building themselves a job.
Right.
They weren't trying to grow a business. And there's a big delta gap in there. Some people are great at building a business, and some people are great at building a job, but not everybody's great at both. And then as you see companies try to grow and scale, they get into these areas of cratering and death valleys. Only about 5% of companies in America ever reach $1 million in revenue.
Right.
Then you go from 1 million to 5, and 5 to 10, and 10 to 20. And everywhere there's these deltas where they're cratering. They're not growing. They're struggling. And they think, well, the people who helped me back at the day I started, and now I'm a $10 million company, they're going to be this, I should carry these people with me. Well, the skills required to build $1 million company versus to take it from 1 to 10 are usually different.
Right.
The complexities, the levels, the layers, the communication model, they're often different. So if you're not upskilling yourself as a CEO, and that's why people hire a coach, they need to upskill themselves. They realize what started me here isn't going to get me there. I need that outside person, someone who's been there, done that, and a lot of cases survived the mistakes like I did. And that's where we come in. So I think it's important for your people in your audience to understand that what you did isn't going to necessarily get you there. And trying to go back to the old norm is pretty much impossible, because there's a new norm that exists.
Right. It's funny that you talk about coaches needing coaches. Just yesterday, I saw a meme that somebody posted, and it said, even doctors have doctors.
Right.
And, and that's the thing. I mean, we can't treat ourselves. We shouldn't
treat ourselves.
We can go to Dr. Google and, and we can look up some things, but, I'm not going to go to YouTube to learn how to do surgery on myself, and I think that's one of the things that is so important is hiring a coach. And that is, a lot of what you do, because we get caught in the weeds. We only see what's going on with us. And a coach has the experience of dealing with a lot of other people, and seeing, okay, well, this worked for this person. And, what about if you do this, and all of those various things. Plus, when we do get caught in our head, we get caught in our head, right? There's that loop that is in there. And, maybe it's I have to provide for my family and my employees. I have to do this. I have to do that. And all of those things just, the coach gets you out of that, and, and able to see, okay, yes, you still, those things still exist, but.
Right. Well, I always say people don't have to really do anything. You get to do a lot of these things. A lot of it's, as I talk about it in my book, it's a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. It's intention, not expectation. And, I opened the book talking about my biggest failures. I was the CEO of a company who was doing $2 million a year. And I was $600,000 in debt after 10 years. And I was going to crash the business. The bank was calling the note. My son and I were going to be homeless. It's not a good feeling.
No.
I call it the itty bitty shitty committee. The voices of the demons.
Oh yeah, those voices were just beating you up.
And I had 600,000 of them. I mean, the arena was full at capacity. And my coach came in and got me unstuck, got me out of my own way. But I went with a coach who'd grown businesses. And I always tell people, it's like, it's great to have someone who understands theory. But if you've actually got someone who's played the game, so to speak, that's why I always tell people, like, the worst day of my life has become my marketing message.
Right.
And then we turned the business around, got financial literacy, which I needed, changed the way we hire. We went from hiring from resume to hiring for DNA, not resume, and grew the business to an Inc. 5000 6-time company. There's a lot of bumps in the road there. People love, like, it's kind of the rock star. Oh, you won the fight. You made the Inc. 6 times. That was a byproduct.
Right. That shouldn't be a goal.
It was a symptom of I had to get my butt out of debt. And I had to get out of debt and to grow that business. I had debtors to satisfy, banks, etc. And for someone to consider hiring a coach, one, I had to be ready. I hit rock bottom. I call it my entrepreneur rock bottom.
Right.
The bank did accelerate that process. Like, hey, by the way, we're going to take all your stuff and your house.
Yeah. You're bottom now.
I guess I'm in trouble now. So getting through that part, but also recognizing I was ready to be coached. I was ready to change is important. My level of self-awareness was growing. I was realizing that my imposter syndrome was pretty loud, but I also realized that there had to be a better way. I realized I didn't know that. So I used one coach for 7 years, and I've had another coach in my life since then, so I could upskill my game. I'm probably never going to be without a coach. I mean, I don't know if you can see in the pictures behind me, but I'm a big kind of a baseball fan. So I still play baseball. I have a swing coach for my game.
Right.
If I can look at successful athletes and other successful, I mean, if Denzel Washington can have an acting coach, I can certainly have a coach for my business.
Yeah. And I mean, athletes are a great example of that. The greatest athletes in the world still have coaches. They still have people who work with them on specific things. I mean, Tiger Woods would be probably a great example of that. He was having a little trouble with his swing. Now, there were obviously a variety of reasons for that, not the least of which was, some pretty big physical reasons. But, he hired someone to help him through that. And I mean, it's going to be obviously very interesting to see how he's able to come back from the accident. But, he is, now he's back to some of the basic levels, physical therapy. I mean, some of those things. And I think that's maybe one of the things that many business owners, especially small business owners who think they have to be all to everyone, they think we can't admit that we need help. And, and everybody needs help.
Yeah. And the reason they don't get the help is because of pride and ego.
Right.
I mean, it's just, and that was what held me back.
I'm supposed to be so smart. I started my own business. And
look at how smart I am. I'm still in business. During the pandemic, I was working with a lot of my clients whose businesses were shut down. And they would bring that manic energy, that crazy behavior, chasing the abundance, chasing the bright and shiny. They'd bring it home. Well, where were they going to manifest it? Where were they going to?
Their dogs are going, whoa.
or they're driving their family, crazy. And it's one of those situations where, there's a lot of internal pressure an entrepreneur will put on themselves to perform. And there's also a lot of directing of maybe some not so healthy behavior patterns. If you take a look at the behavior of an entrepreneur, you look at the behavior of an alcoholic, they're often very similar.
Very similar.
We will sacrifice our families for the rush of the high of the sale or the alcohol or the drug. And watching people in those tough times where they were condensed, they couldn't go to their go-to drug of choice, which a lot of people is entrepreneurship. What were they going to do? Because they still had to live life. They still had to get through it. And then they had to deal with themselves first, and others had to deal with them. It was a fascinating time that we'll probably never see again. I think there's going to be a lot of healing, hopefully, that takes out of that. But I also think you're going to see a lot of people from the pandemic and these entrepreneurs who were the serial entrepreneurs who are never satisfied. Divorce is going to happen. Rehab is going to, they're going to go up. All those things are going to happen because they didn't have a place to push that energy, a place to push that mindset. Because pride and ego was so much in their driver's seat. Everybody's got pride and ego on some level. It's just like imposter syndrome. But if we let the pride and ego, think about your life like a car. If you let pride and ego or imposter syndrome in your driver's seat and you're in the passenger seat, it's controlling you. You're not controlling it. Through a lot of techniques and a lot of the coaching that I do, you get people to switch seats, sit in the driver's seat, because the pride and ego is still going to be there.
And it should be. I mean, it plays an important role.
Absolutely. And not everybody, I love that you get that. Not everybody gets that. It does play an important role because at times through our history of life, it's kept us safe. Don't put your finger in the light socket is a good message. Look both ways crossing the street is a good message. But going deeper into debt like I did when you don't have the money to pay for it, not such a good message. Just to prove how right I was. And so many people get wrapped up in proving how right I am, how smart I am, and I know more than you. Let me prove it. But really, that's all veneer for their fears and insecurities.
Right. And you said a key word several times, and that's control. For so many people, and I don't care if, they're the 1-person business or the 20,000 person business, all of a sudden they lost control. We did not know what was going to happen. We didn't know, how long things were going to be shut down. We didn't know what it was going to be like when employees came. We didn't know if our employees would even come back. I mean, and that's obviously something that many businesses are still struggling with. That their employees either, are happy being home for a variety of reasons, or, they found something else, which, maybe that was okay. But yeah, I mean, they're struggling. And so they have lost the control. And for many people, they started a business because they wanted that control. They didn't want to be
Right.
the one being bossed around, all those various things. So when they lost that control, that was very hard for people. And like you said, that's where destructive behavior came out of it, and whether it was with their family or trying to micromanage their employees with, I'm sorry, I remember, some of the things that I saw were, people, putting the things counting keyboard strokes on their employees' computers who were at home. And I told one person who was considering doing that, I said, so you just don't trust your employees.
Right.
And I said, did you trust them in the office? Well, yeah. I said, so, and if you didn't trust them in the office, then they should be gone. I mean, that's just the thing. And so if you trusted them in the office, trust them at home, and they probably will be better employees because they're not commuting. They're not having all of that stress. They're not going to the water cooler and talking to everybody. They're not being the disruptor. So trust them now. And, and I think that's been one of the, like I said, one of the harder things for people to accept is that control has changed, is maybe the best way to put it.
Well, if you take a look at Google's doing a lot of work around this right now called a
Mm-hmm.
psychologically safe work environment.
Mm-hmm.
If we create a psychologically safe work environment, we have measures in place where people are seen, heard, known, and accepted. And we
Mm-hmm.
see, hear them, know them, and accept them. They're going to be who
Mm-hmm.
they are. They're
Right.
going to do the work we need
Mm-hmm.
done. And by giving them a voice, millennials are famously known for wanting to work in teams,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to have freedom and flexibility, and have a
Mm-hmm.
voice in the room around
Right.
big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
No, they can't make the decision, but they want their
Mm-hmm.
feelings heard. You give people that
Mm-hmm.
space, what you're going to do is you're going to create that psychologically safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
And people know they can't get that everywhere. So they're not going to create a situation, by and large, you're going to have the
Mm-hmm.
outliers, but by and large,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to be terminated or they're going to go look
Mm-hmm.
for another job.
Mm-hmm.
And the speech I just gave in Florida on Saturday was to a group of old line manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to them, same thing I'll share with with your audience today is the number one reason people quit a job isn't money, isn't drive distance.
Mm-hmm.
It's us as leaders. It's
Mm-hmm.
the first line leader.
Mm-hmm.
And you also know, so not only are you losing the great employee you've got, but you're also going to lose all great future employees because the best source of your great future employees are your current employees.
Right.
So if you have
Mm-hmm.
a great place to work,
Mm-hmm.
you treat people well, they perform, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to want their friends to be
Mm-hmm.
there because by and large, they're going to like the work they do.
Right. And they're going to say, hey,
And
come
they're
here
gonna
too. Mm-hmm.
Right. Versus, just these guys goes, well, I don't want to pay $15 an hour. I should pay them $12 and they should earn those other $3. Like, yeah, they're not coming to work for you. So if 3 slides I dropped in to prove my point, but I want to pay them $12 an hour to go work in manufacturing. It's hot. It's nasty. It's hard physical labor work.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the alternative where your entry level people are going. They're going to Costco for $16.50 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to, there's a picture of a guy I found on Amazon's feed on Twitter. He's got blue hair. He's making $15 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and his benefits are 100% employer paid.
Wow.
Or they can go to Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
Chick-fil-A pays you $16.50
Right.
an hour.
And they send you to school.
They send you to school.
Mm-hmm.
You don't work Sunday, so if you like your football, even better.
Mm-hmm.
And you get free Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It's not
or
bad.
I can come work at your place and get yelled at by some guy who's bitter about. No, you got to.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, as employers, to bring in these people. We have to
Mm-hmm.
recruit differently, and we have to
Mm-hmm.
become an employer of choice.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing that employees really do have a lot of choices as to where to go. Because, companies, I mean, they did furlough, they laid off, people, all sorts of things. But so they're looking for those extras, like a lot of the work from home. I mean, when we switch back to hybrid, that's going to be very interesting. But, you mentioned your son. I think a lot of people are figuring out, okay, as long as I get the work done, does it matter if I'm working at 11 o'clock at night or 11 in the morning? So having, obviously there are times where you have to be online, maybe for team meetings, things like that. But yeah, I mean, if you are one of those people who is a night owl or early morning or whatever, working weekends,
Right.
I mean, you might want to have Tuesday, Wednesday off because that's
Right.
when your kids have softball or whatever.
Perfect. Yes, exactly.
And so we're finding that when we're empowering, there's that word, when we're empowering our employees, then it's better. Now, obviously it is different with companies where you have to be there, like a manufacturing company.
Right.
But there are still things that you can adjust to say, okay, how can we make this better for you? And because they had to during the pandemic. So why not carry some of that forward?
No, that makes complete sense. And the reality is this is what they call a candidate controlled marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
It's not employer controlled. It's candidate controlled. There are a lot of data points out there. And one of the data points that really makes people uncomfortable, but it's true, is we have the lowest labor participation rate in over 52 years. So there are less people working. That's the first point. Secondly, unemployment numbers, if you look at that data point, which is, I argue, is very skewed. So I always go labor participation first. But if you just look at unemployment for the sake of conversation, we're at full employment already in the United States. Then you look at the subcategory of millennials. They're at 11.5% unemployment. So if you thought your baby boomers were going to leave and you're going to bring in your millennials and they're going to replace, it's not working.
Right. Millennials went, ooh, I can do my own thing.
Right. I can freelance. I can gig economy, this thing. I can do some different things. And ultimately where this all leaves us is that there are 7 million more jobs than there are people for them in the United States. Right. So walking around thinking employees should be blessed to be in your presence and they should bow down to you as the owner or the plant manager, that it's not going to happen.
Right. Right. I love it when people, say bad things about millennials, but I'm like, hello, we raised them.
Right. Yeah.
They have those views, but what they're, the things that millennials want, I think a lot of us baby boomers want too, but we never thought we could ask for it. And so, but yeah, I mean, it really is an interesting time. It's kind of like, it's the whole home market, things are selling for way more than what they did even a year ago, right. But yeah, employees can ask for a lot more now, especially depending on the job, they can say, I'm only going to work 4 days a week, but I promise you'll get 10 hours from me on those days. Right. Or I'm not coming in. I mean, there are so many people now who went, I love working from home. I'm getting the work done, so why do I have to go back to an office? And I think that's going to be one of the challenges.
So funny. Yeah. It's so funny you say that about the millennials and the baby boomers and the disconnect. What I've seen is you got the millennials saying to the baby boomers who now have grandkids, produced by the millennial, saying, hey, can you come over and see the kids this weekend? I've got to work. Millennials are saying, oh, no, you choose to work. And they're like, well, just tell your boss you're not coming in. Because this is the days you can see the grandkids. Grandkids trump. I mean, anybody's got grandkids.
Oh, yes, grandkids trump.
Yeah, and so it's shifting things. So usually we're so used to the parent teaching the child. Well, now the children are pushing back saying, that's your choice. Don't act like you're a victim, mom or dad. Come see the grandkids. And they're like, hey, I can't staff my weekend shift because nobody wants to work overtime. Oh, now you dig a little deeper. Why is that pendulum swung the other way? It's actually being driven by the millennials who are the parents of the grandkids.
Right. And, and other things. I mean, they're telling him, why aren't you asking for this? Why aren't you doing that? One of the big things that is, of course, very important to millennials is that, companies give back and are philanthropic and community minded. And I mean, that's a fabulous thing, and so when companies are having to add that in as a benefit, and it's funny, years ago, I worked for a very, very large corporation in Denver. It was about the 9th largest corporation in the world. And we had a huge philanthropic program. And, and at that point, about $1 million budget. I mean, and this is 20 years ago. I mean, this was big time. And that was just in Denver. Our budget was just for our Denver site. And we very much use that as part of our recruiting. We told people this is what we do. If you want to be, it was an insurance company. And so a lot of those people were very mathematically minded. And so many of them were math tutors, and we allowed that. It was like, okay, every other Wednesday, you can go off to this middle school and be a math tutor. And we had people who were attached to those kids forever. They bonded with them, all sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, we really did recognize even back then that our employees cared about what we were doing in the community. And so not only was it, a recruiting tool, it also banked us that good feeling in the community. People knew, okay, this is a great corporation. They've done good things. So, if and when bad things happen, we kind of had that good bankability. But,
Sure.
I remember I asked my CEO one time, I said, and I was in charge of the budget. So that was, that was fun. I love that part. But I asked him, why do you do this? And he said, we do it because everybody we're helping are future employees, future people who could be doing business with us, future shareholders. And
Sure.
he said, and that was why we do this. And, and I think that's something that many companies don't recognize is, and it doesn't have to cost money. I mean, maybe you go and do a Habitat for Humanity house, or, one of the things that we did a lot of with that company was we had a lot of people who traveled. And so we said, bring back the little shampoo, all of those things. And we took them to shelters. That cost nothing. But,
Sure.
it was a great thing to do. And so there's so many things that companies can do. Now, obviously, it is a little bit more difficult with everybody working remotely, but you can still figure things out.
Yeah, well, here's what I hear often is the massive amount of intentionality around that.
Mm-hmm.
We want to give back.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of the math tutor one or the shampoo one, but they all go into giving back to our community, giving back to our. So there are shareholders in a company for sure, but there's also stakeholders. And if you take care of the stakeholders, they are your best sales force.
Right.
They tell everybody, hey, this is a great place to work. You should buy their products and services, things like that. So it's that intentionality around things versus saying, well, we're only going to do one program per year, and this is what we're going to do, and leave it that way. I think there's
and it matches our corporate mission.
Yeah, it matches our corporate mission, and so we're gonna throw a golf tournament, and we're gonna have a bunch of stuffed shirts out there, and we're gonna give the money to to a charity that if you take a look at a lot of charities around, who spend 95% of their money on administration and 5% back to the charity.
Right.
I love that hands-on approach, that impact in the community, that legacy. It sounds like I love the story about the tutors. Like if they're still you're impacting kids, and a lot of kids don't maybe have the ideal parental home or the parents who have the time and availability that a tutor can provide to them. And just those little conversations and the fact that someone gave to that young person, who knows what that person can do? Who knows what that young person is going to impact?
I mean, they might turn out to be the president of a company, the United States. I mean, who knows? Or they might just be the greatest person at Chick-fil-A you've ever seen.
Right. Nothing wrong with any of those. It's someone, but someone cared about me. Someone took time out of their day. And the company saying, we'll pay you to go do that. Go do that. That's a huge wake behind the boat of that company.
Right. And now I think there's probably a need even more so for some of those things. I keep hearing, I don't have kids, but I still read, and so one of the things that we keep seeing reports of over and over again is there are many kids who will never get caught back up. With the year of homeschooling, for many reasons, they're just not going to get caught back up. And so if you have a company that has a way to be a tutor, or help these kids, why not do it? Yes, there are altruistic methods, but it also makes you feel good. And it makes your employees feel good. They spend an hour tutoring somebody on an English paper. Great.
Well, there's, I think if we just look, there's always opportunity. And, it certainly makes sense that some people will think that the best way I can impact someone is giving them the dollar. That makes sense.
Right.
If we give of our time, it's how I look at it. I can always go make more money. I can't make more time.
Right.
Time is finite. So if I give you my time, then I think I'm giving you my greatest gift. From our time together, who knows what conversations we'll have, from our time together, who knows what ideas we'll create, from our time together, who knows what generative questions I'll ask you to help you maybe create something brand new that you never even thought of, versus just writing a check.
Yeah. Because writing the check is easy. And, I've worked for nonprofits. We need the money. I mean, let's not,
it's not either or, it's and both.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And being able to do things, and I think that's one of the things that we discovered, with our employees many years ago, was many of them couldn't write the checks, but they could go be the tutor. they could bring shampoo in. I mean, there were so many other things that they could do that, and that was one of our goals was, how can we make this something that all of our employees can do? And I think that was, and again, did it take a little coordination? Sure. But, it was obviously worth it in the long run.
Well, it's, the interesting thing about that too is you can certainly probably come up with stories of the impact it's created. I'm going to guarantee you there's stories that you've never heard, and the impact is even deeper.
Right.
It's funny when, like, going back to speaking from stage, they always say, well, how do you know your audience liked you? You can get your Q scores, you can get your different ratings and all that kind of stuff. I said, if I had a conversation with one person, or I said something that stuck with someone and they went home and made it a different change or a different impact, then my time was well spent. I don't show up to speak from stage to get, I need to have clients. I need to have guarantee this. I need to have a guarantee. I show up, and if I do my best and if something lands with somebody, it's so powerful, because that I had to switch for me from expectation to intention. And it's so funny. I just thought of this. I was taught that by a 9-year-old boy. I had to give a speech in Toronto. The family came because it was supposed to be for entrepreneurs, and they opened it up to the world. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to say to these kids? I'm freaking out. My imposter syndrome screaming at me. And so I gave my speech. I modified it a little bit. And I had a little boy come up to me. His name was Alec. I actually put him in my book. And he drew this diagram of 13 F's equals S. So I kept saying fail forward, because I wanted to kind of make it not just entrepreneurial or money driven or success driven for business. How can it land for anybody? So this little boy comes up to me, wanted to meet me. It's always nice when people want to meet you after the speech. And he said, Mr. Todd, I really appreciate you coming a long way from Detroit to Toronto to give this speech. He goes, I've learned I'm never, ever going to fail, because I'm never going to do something 13 times. That's crazy. Who does something 13 times and fails? He goes, because the close of the speech was, every time failure is something, as a word we've assigned to an experience. It's not really true. So it's a definition we've assigned to an experience. So if you just assign a new definition of remove failing and replace it with learning, and learn and learn and learn, you'll never be failure. And he gives him this big hug. His mom got all emotional.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. She did good.
Oh yeah, she did good. And she's like, we've been having some struggles. He's not really focusing. He thinks, he just talks negatively about us. This is awesome. I'm so glad we brought him. And so fast forward, COVID hits. I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself. And I the mom wanted to be my Facebook friend. So I said, hey, I'm writing my book. The book's really for entrepreneurs. Would you mind if I included I saw it as our story.
Right.
And she's like, absolutely. And I had a picture. I took a picture of the little boy. I said, can I put that in the book? She's absolutely. I've gotten more goodwill from that young man who I wasn't sure I could impact. He's impacted me.
Right.
So like that, I don't know. I think there's just so much opportunity available when we go in with a great intention to impact others.
Right. And I think one of the things is that we always have to remember, and, we've kind of been alluding to this, is we always have to be learning, and it doesn't matter what we do, we always should be learning, and even from just the simple little things. I mean, I would have been just absolutely blown away. First of all, that a 9-year-old was brave enough to even come up and speak exactly. And then be, so cool about it. But yeah, I mean, it just, we all, but how many people, first of all, wouldn't have even stopped to have talked to people after a presentation? They're busy, they're doing their book signing, right? They're at that back table, they're making that extra money. And so we miss those chances to learn. I mean, you mentioned, improving the lives of others, and where you can do it. And it's everywhere. I mean, we can learn from the people in the grocery store line. We can learn, from places, I think that are unexpected, is maybe we're not thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn. And, it might just be that you learn a new funny joke, but it also might be that you learn, oh my gosh, I need to slow down. I need to, sure. I need to do this, and just be open to all of those things, as opposed to being so caught up in our head. And again, I think that's maybe where the pandemic has made us stop and pause and really be thinking about, what is it that we're doing with our lives?
For me, it has. I mean, for a lot of my clients, it has, because go, is rewarded.
Right.
The to be able to tell your friends how busy you are is applauded.
Right. To be a workaholic is almost a badge of honor.
For sure. For sure. It's been really interesting. I have a friend of mine, he does online sales, and his business was really hampered in the beginning by COVID because what he was selling he used to sell products and services that nobody was buying at the time. And he just sat down one day and really started thinking about what are people going to do now that they're home? And he pivoted into like 10 categories. And his two biggest sellers were, of all things, puzzles and sidewalks.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I fell into that. Yep.
And he's telling me the story and how you get these notes from people and they build these puzzles. And he was so inside. He's like, I really, I'm glad my business is able to survive because I was creative about it. And he and I talked multiple times. We got him unstuck about some things. He goes, but it's kind of cool to see people like sitting down generationally around the kitchen table, build a puzzle. Right. Or to have the kids go out and do sidewalk chalk with grandma or versus everything being on devices, everything being on your tablets, everything being through technology. Technology is great, but anything to excess we're going to become bloated with it. Right. So I really think there's a lot of truth in what you said.
Right. And I think it was a good thing in many ways that everybody was forced back into their homes. Exactly what you were saying. We had to spend time with people that, maybe we've gotten into the habit of you saw them for dinner and maybe a couple hours of TV and that was it. And even at watching TV, they had their phones and I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else.
Sure.
I live at the end of a cul-de-sac and now I'm in Atlanta, so temperatures got warm here, fairly quickly. And so probably by about April of last year, we started getting together out on Saturdays with everybody, and we socially distanced, we did all of those things. But, part of it was we needed to see other people and talk to other people, but we really got to know our neighbors by doing that.
Yeah. We did the same thing. Yeah.
And even those that didn't join us were still invited. And I mean, it was just, and it's funny because I've been thinking we need to do that again. We got out of that. We got busy. Things, things opened back up. I love that phrase. And so we stopped doing, and I think we need to start doing that again, and just getting together and, having a drink on a Saturday afternoon and talking about how your weeks went.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that piece. What comes up for me is the word reconnection. I was doing a lot virtually, and in my rider, I had two types of pricing. One for virtual and one for in-person.
Right.
In-person, right? Because I'm away from my family. I'm traveling.
Right. It's going to cost
extra
more.
Expense for that. It just costs more. It's going to cost more. I had people literally saying, we will pay you more, but we want you to come in the night. Can you come in the night before? Because we're going to do a dinner.
Okay.
And we're going to have you speak in the middle of the day. And we want you to be part of it because we want to our associations or our organizations to have a greater connection. And we think you can be part of that. We'd love to.
Right.
We'll pay for an extra. We'll pay for extra. I'm like, wow. Before people, people
pay?
were, how can we get it cheaper? How can we? Now they're we're willing to be more flexible because of that loss of connection. And in that space of the distancing or the loss of that connection is, like you talked about earlier, the vacuums, the isolation, the loneliness that creates. And it's certainly lonely in the human space. It's lonely as a leader. It's lonely at the top. There's truth in that. And if there's ways that we can create that connectivity, if there's ways that we can create that sense of community, I don't want to say family necessarily, but you could, then I think what we were able to do is I'm hoping coming out of this situation, people have a greater appreciation for that because I think a lot of us lost that. And now that we have that, let's not lose it again. Let's be cognizant of that. Because like I said earlier, I have two beliefs. One, the time is finite and our energy is our most renewable resource. And if we're giving someone our time and our energy and we're fully present for them, certainly we can do that on technology. You and I are doing that right now.
Right.
But if we're doing that in person and we feel that energy from another human being, and we're able to help them be seen, heard, known, and accepted, we're giving them such a gift that has been absent because of the pandemic.
Right. I think one of the things that people have really made big adjustments with is time. For one thing, we, for the most part, didn't have commutes. My husband used to drive 45 minutes on a good day each way. He had to drive right by the main home of Home Depot. And boy, you timed that one wrong. And, you're there for a long time. And so, we all of a sudden got that time back. Now some people, many people use that time productively. They listen to podcasts. It was their quiet time. I mean, I had one person who told me that she misses that so much. I'm like, you miss driving in traffic? And she said, I don't care about that. She said, that was my only quiet time where it was just me. And she said, so I've started going for drives. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, we've figured out our time differently. I have not been to an in-person networking event since February of 2020.
Oh, wow.
Not sure I'm going to go back to them. And part of that is the time factor. It's not just that you're there for an hour, it's the preparation time. I tell people, oh my gosh, I have to put shoes on. And so, there's that, there's the commute. There is obviously some cost, whether you're paying or, all sorts of things. There's the time at the event. Then there's, the reverse time of all of that. And, one of the things that I have thought of is I haven't done any of that. Has my business suffered? No. Have I missed seeing those people? Most definitely. I mean, I really miss seeing those people, but from a business perspective, it hasn't hurt me at all, because I sat down and thought, okay, if I would have done 3 hours going to, whatever meeting today, then I'm going to spend 3 hours online networking, and so I'm going to attend a webinar. I'm going to spend time on LinkedIn, all those various things. And that has been so much more beneficial than those other things that I think is what I'll continue. Now, will I go back to some in-person stuff? Yes, but not nearly as much as what I used to.
Well, and I can appreciate where you're coming from. My business has grown 400% from online stuff. And when I talked to those, someone asked me the other day, like, hey, you talked to those 42 CEOs in 67 days. How many became clients? I said, 0.
Right.
Like, really? Yeah, but they became I have 42 salespeople now that I didn't have to pay. And
who said, oh my gosh, you need to talk to this guy.
Exactly, for sure. And what I have figured, so I've been doing some more live appearances and live events and some different works with boards. And what I'm finding is really unique is there's been much less fluff conversation, which has been really refreshing. Right. I love generative conversation. I love it when I can ask you a question of how are you? And you really tell me, hey, I'm not so good, versus we're great. Everything's great.
Right.
Everything's not great. And so for me, I've really noticed that. And the other thing and I've seen stories in the news that contradict this statement, but I've honestly seen a lot of kindness from people. I've seen a lot of kindness, even on planes. People are just kinder in some respects. Certainly I've seen people get antsy in a hurry. And
but they probably were anyway. I mean,
they probably, right. They're going to be that way anyway. But I've just seen a real level of almost like a genuine appreciation for the ability to go and do things and to sit and connect. And certainly, on planes, we're wearing our masks, and that's the way it's going to be, and that's okay. But just people just little courtesies and little thoughtfulness, it matters.
We are. Yeah, we're thinking about those people. I shared with you before the program that I had just last weekend, I went to Minneapolis for a family wedding. So Friday, it's early morning flight. I mean, we left the house here at 5:30 to get to the airport. So, it was early. And, and I had a window seat. So that way I was a little bit more protected because I do have some health issues. But this was the first time I had flown where my husband wasn't next to me. So I was going to sit next to a total stranger. Sure. Now the plane was 100% full. I mean, they had a standby list. I'm thinking 7:00 in the morning to Minneapolis. Okay. But so this gentleman and his sister, he was very, he pointed out, this is my sister. And, he was 70s, somewhere around there. And he sits down, he's got his bag of his breakfast food. And he sits down and this is my sister. Now he didn't introduce himself. It was just kind of this, but he tells me, he said, I have my breakfast here. I've had my shots. He said, but if you are more comfortable with me not taking my mask off, I won't eat my breakfast.
There you go.
And I said, oh my gosh, I said, please enjoy your breakfast. I said, I said, I've had my shots. Obviously I will keep my mask on, but thank you so much for asking. And I mean, that just blew me away that, that was, he would have not, now I don't, I really don't know what he would have said if I had said, no, don't eat your breakfast, dude. But, I just was totally blown away by the fact that was his first concern was me, and he knew nothing about me. And I think you're right. I think, we hear about the nasty ickies, but there's so much more where people are like, hey, what can I do to help?
Right. And that renews my faith in people. Mm-hmm. And it's, when you were telling your story, the thing that came up for me was he wanted you to be seen and heard. He was like, you're my traveling companion for these few hours. Mm-hmm. I want to see you. I want to honor you. And I want to have, versus me assuming and having their, there's awkward tension in the air potentially. So I give him a lot of credit. It was very, very insightful on his part.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was so sweet. And he enjoyed his breakfast, and I hadn't had breakfast. So all it did was make me hungry, but yeah, I mean, it really was the sweetest thing. And so I think that's, I think that really is something as we've been saying that if has come out of this is we are for the most part. And I hope this continues, when we get back to normal, which that, we've said that's not happening. I hope that we continue to be thinking about that, even if it's just, hey, I've watched you on the last couple Zooms, you haven't quite seemed, maybe, that's one of the things people have said is, they're starting to notice people are a little disheveled, in the background, things might not, and is that a sign that there are some issues, or, oh my gosh, I just caught you too early? Things like that. And so I think that's, we do need to be more concerned about people, and, and let's just keep carrying that forward.
Well, I notice most of my client calls are on Zoom. I don't do a whole lot in person. And, I've found it's becoming quite a skill to be able to read people on Zoom, because they can,
right. You don't have much body language.
Right. You're kind of squared off, and, the energy could be different. And so as a coach, it becomes very important to me, because my job is to read the room. My job is to ask the questions to help you get unstuck around what you want to accomplish. And so I really hate doing that on the phone, because I had one client, I said, are you making coffee? Yeah. I'm like, are you listening? Yeah. Okay. Mirror back to me what I just said. And he couldn't. I'm like, you're paying for this.
Right.
Like, dude, you're not going to get the value out of this. So, we only, like I said, we only do Zoom calls. That's it, or we're done. So, okay, well, that's, and he's gotten a lot of value out of it. So the value we can have, again, it's people just really need that time to be seen and heard. And when we see and hear them, a lot of magic can happen. Defenses come down, resentments go away. Walls come down, hearts open up. But when we just pretend like I don't see you and I don't hear you, a lot of damage can occur as well.
Right. And I think that has been one of the benefits of, the conversations like we're having, with maybe one-on-one or even small group on Zooms, when you're in an office, that almost immediately has its own set of rules as to what you can say, what you can't say. When you've walked into the CEO's office and, you're in your little chair and, the CEO's up there, I mean, you're not going to say things, but when you're on a Zoom call and you can tell that, okay, they're in their kitchen, their kids wandering around behind them. There's a different level of intimacy, and great CEOs are really learning how to use that to their advantage. They're noticing they maybe never would have said, hey, Todd, tell me about your kid. I see you've got this picture behind you, or whatever. And, and so it comes back to exactly what we were talking about at the very start, communication. It really is about how, how great CEOs just have to make sure that they're communicating with their employees the best possible way.
I think great CEOs are the leaders. Jim Collins talked about it in Good to Great, the level 5 leaders. And the level 5 leaders are very much about others, not about themselves. So when I ask you a question about the painting behind you, or the microphone behind you, or what it looks like to be like a little bear underneath the microphone, there's a story probably to all that. I mean, we surround ourselves with our stories and our stuff. And if someone tells you a story and you get to know them a little bit better, I'm like, that. That. So I played baseball last night. And you talk to baseball players and you find out how many of the same things, guys who you just see in uniform, like are these successful CEOs, these architects, all these, and the guy who who works at the grocery store. It all brings everybody together, but we all break down those walls through communication. So it can be done in a million different ways. And I'm really glad and thankful for the opportunity to be on your show today for us to communicate.
Right. Yeah, because it's so much fun. And we definitely have to do it more than every 3 years, because you do have such great information. But tell us, tell us how people connect with you, how they get your information, and what services you provide.
Well, so the best way for people to connect to me, well, first I want to give them a gift. So if you're interested in anything we've talked about, go to my website from sucktosuccess.com and download a free chapter of my book. That'd be my gift to you. Just mention to me that you heard me on Deb's show. If someone's really a big fan, you can reach out to me on my email, todd@extraordinaryadvisors.com, and I'm happy to set up one of those free calls like I did with all those CEOs from around the world last year. And ultimately, what I'm spending 90% of my time doing right now is going around and working with companies, working with CEOs, helping them get unstuck, inside out leadership, creating their lives by design, and then working with boards in associations doing the same thing. Because a lot of them are trying to get new direction, where they're going to go. What does it look like going forward? How can we do things so that, ultimately the legacy I leave by being on this planet is I've improved lives, which is my reason to be here.
Right. I love it. Well, Todd, as I said, we have to do this more often than every 3 years, because you do have such great insight and such great information. Your website is extraordinaryadvisors.com or sucktosuccess.com.
It's actually from Suck to Success.
Oh, okay. See, I wrote it down wrong. So there we go. Okay. Got that right. So, on your websites, you've got great information. So I encourage people to see that, and really connect with you and share those insights. Because this, as we said, we're learning, and we need to continue learning all along, and we never know who we're going to learn from. And so, I'm just blessed to be able to have learned from you today.
And I'm blessed to have been on your show. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Deb.
Great. Well, do you have any final thoughts for everyone?
I think for people, what the pandemic taught me, and many other things that have happened in the last 3 years since we've met, is if we can pivot our mindset that something is happening for us, not to us, we will literally, my coach tells me this all the time, we're literally using a different part of our brain. My coach is Danny Freeland. He's a neuroscientist he's literally a medical doctor who understands and can tell you why your brain does what it does. And when we just pivot that one thing from it's happening for us, not to us, we're using the higher cerebral cortex part of our brain versus the amygdala, which is the reptilian fight or flight part of our brain. So we can just start changing things they're happening for us, not to us. The change, I can speak from experience. The changes in my life have been immense and incredibly positive.
Great. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Greer. I've been having such a great conversation with Todd Palmer. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Greer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.